everybody. I know there's going to be some people trickling in from your workshops. I hope you had a great afternoon session of both of your workshops. Welcome to our last plenary session. We're going to have one last session and then we'll transition into dinner. So I'm going to let Harley introduce our next speaker.
Hi everyone, I'm Harley. I'm from Lake Placid High School. I'm a senior. I'm a member of the social media committee on the planning team. And Shauna Potocky is the education strategist for the National Park Service. She'll be sharing about how national parks are connected to climate change, hope, and action. You'll hear about opportunities to connect with our national park system and how parks are ultimate connectors. Let's welcome Shauna up to the stage.
Thank you. All right, how are you doing? Oh my gosh. How are you doing? Yeah. How many of you are excited that dinner is right after this? Are you feeling it? I'm feeling it a little bit. Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for that. Okay, thanks. Oh, did that just turn it off? Please hold. Oh, right here? Okay. Well, welcome. First and foremost, thank you so much. I'm going to walk. Sorry. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here late in the day, last session before dinner. I'm really grateful that you have made the time to be here. And this is your space. You belong in this space. You have a place in this space, and I just want to welcome you to it. I also want to thank the Wild Center for having me here. It's really exciting to be here, to get to observe your summit, and to hear the conversations, to hear your ideas. And so I just want to thank you for having me here. My name is Shauna Potocky, and I'm the education strategist for the National Park Service. I work for all of the educators that work across the National Park Service. How many of you knew that the National Park Service had education rangers? How many of you, that's a brand new idea? There are all different types of rangers in the National Park Service, and I am just really grateful to have the opportunity to share some of the work that we're doing here and to tell you about some of the opportunities that might interest you. But before we do that, I want to just acknowledge that in doing this work, we have the opportunity to create new hope. And I understand that hope in and of itself doesn't solve the issues. It's actually action, and action is what creates that longer term hope. And through our collective force or our superpowers, we have the ability to create phenomenal change. So in your journal, I just want you to open up a page, doesn't matter where, if you've run out of space, and I just want you to jot down what your superpowers are. Everybody has superpowers, and it might be something that you haven't told other people that you have. Maybe it's some skill or talent that just you harbor to yourself, or maybe it's something that one of your friends would look at you and say, I know what your superpower is, and they'd be able to tell it to you. So I just want you to jot down quickly what your superpower is.
I'm going to swap mics because this one's dying.
Okay. So jot that down really quickly because then we're going to jump into something else. So the next big piece of tapping into our collective force to create change is to connect. So what I want you to do, because I'm sure many of you have been sitting for a lot today, I want you to just stand up and introduce yourself to the person behind you or in front of you, because you're probably already sitting by your buddies. All right. And with that amazing connection, I'm going to bring us back together. And you can grab your seats. So go ahead and grab your seats. And hopefully, at the very least, at the end of my session, you have either met a new acquaintance or maybe have a new friend. And so creating that collective, it's so important. So much of the work that we do and the things that we care about to really create change, it's about connecting with each other and connecting and creating relationships. And so I just want to take the moment to acknowledge that, because we're doing this all together. And we have more power when we're working together. So one of the things that I want to jump into at the top of my session here is, what is the thing that we're not hearing about in the news? Let's talk about what you don't hear in the news. What's something that you want to hear about in the news when it comes to climate change? What do you want to hear about? What? Positivity? That it's getting better? Right, that the system is getting better? Yeah. New ways to help? Yep.
Yeah, like not problems, like also solutions.
Yeah, not just problems, but solutions. Imagine how the culture would shift if we started talking more openly and highlighting the good work. How many of you heard inspirational work today? Did you know about it in the news before today? Yeah. How many of you were really impressed by somebody's work today? Yeah. What if we talked more about that? Yeah. Do you think it would change the culture of things? It would. And do you think that for some people, they would be more likely to start acting and become involved because they feel like they could do something and be successful and maybe be a part of a team? So what I wanted to do here was just give you an opportunity to think about if we changed some of the headlines. So here's a couple things that I pulled from a strategy document from the National Park Service. What if you heard in the news that base mitigation and adaptation decisions on high quality information, including the best available science and indigenous knowledge? What if you heard that in the news? Would you be inspired? What about address climate change as a standard of practice at every level of the National Park Service? Would you be inspired? Yeah. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah. Reduce carbon emissions to net zero by 2045 through a commitment to environmentally sustainable operations and practices. Would you be inspired if you knew the National Park Service was doing that? Yeah. And other organizations? So a lot of organizations, I'm just going to move quickly through some of these because I know our time is short. But what if we helped to reframe the conversation and talked about the things that we are doing and the amazing work that you'll never hear about in the news? What if we changed that? And what if we didn't just change the headlines, but we showed the people who are doing the work? What if you could see and connect to those people and those teachers? Who's a teacher in this room? Who's a teacher? Stand up, teachers. Stand up. Because there are teachers working with communities, working with NPS educators to do big things in place in your local communities. And it's probably because of a teacher that you're here today. How many of you are here because your teacher brought you here? Do you think that's easy planning? No. Be really nice to your teachers. What if you got to see students who were doing stewardship projects in their communities where before they had been disenfranchised in their communities? Would that change? Would that start to change some of the things that you see happening and some of the conversations? Or what if you got to see the facilitators who were in the room, people who are not out in the front, but people who are planning and doing hard teamwork and collaboration to co-create meaningful solutions in our communities? What if you could see them in the room doing that work and then see those outcomes? This team right here, if you look back at this photo, hold on, sorry, hold on, please hold. If you look at this photo here, this is a facilitator, her name is Delia, and she is working with a team from America Samoa that we brought for a climate change and equity teacher professional development workshop. And here, there are so many dynamics that they're trying to work through to address some of the change that they need in their community. And then, there they are, presenting what they're taking back to their community to implement at their schools with their students. There's so much work behind the scenes that we don't always see, but people are doing really inspiring work. And I just want to call this out too. When people say that the youth will solve the issues, don't let the adults off the hook so easy, because we're still on the clock. We still have work to do, and so don't let any adult off the hook so easy. And just know there are adults doing really, really big work. So I just want to point that out. And then what if you could see the students who are finding their place in climate work or in food security, and rangers who are working with teachers, the infrastructure that's happening in some of our federal agencies. And then I want to shout out Brittany right here. She's in this selfie with me. She was selected for the first ever NPS Excellence in Education Award. And the picture that I showed of the students on the boat, that was her award-winning program. There are amazing people doing amazing work, but you won't see Brittany in the news. Maybe. So because we don't always see all of that amazing work, I want to use the Park Service as a lens to look at some of the things that are happening behind the scenes that you might not ever hear about regarding the Park Service. So who can tell me how many Park Service sites there are? National Park Service sites. And I know that some people, they've heard it today because they've been talking to me, but I haven't talked to you, and you're 406? So close, not quite. Anybody else have any guesses? Yeah. $405? Little higher? Yeah. Closer? Yeah. 419? Close? Yep. 425. Oh, good job. Woo! Good job. 425. Is that a lot of sites to manage? Yes. The National Park Service manages, we steward sites. We steward some of the most remarkable landscapes and seascapes of our country, and some of the most inspiring stories, and the hardest stories of our country. We have historic sites, cultural sites, and natural sites. They all have different needs in different communities with different climate impacts and different community issues. So that's a big variation. It takes a lot of work to organize. And we break it down into, it's called regions, but I like to think of them as teams. And what we can do is we can strategize around the work and the scale that we have to be able to affect change. And then we can connect all of those teams together. And so think about the scale that the National Park Service has to address climate change and equity. Think about that. So I'm going to introduce you to a few documents. If you are somebody who's working on your climate action plan and you want to go take a peek at what's happening at a big federal agency, you can find these linked on our website. You can just Google them for the Green Parks Plan. We're in the 3rd edition of our sustainability plan for operations in the National Park Service. If you go to our website, it'll take you to this page that has a bunch of tiles on it, and you can look at all the different things that we're doing around water, infrastructure, green building, managing managed landscapes, managing wild landscapes, managing wilderness landscapes. All of them take different specialties to be able to manage. And so just think about that. Just think about the scale of that. And so this is just a quick little look at the higher level goals of that overall strategy. We have an entire division in the National Park Service that's the sustainability division, and that's at the Washington level that helps to push out all of these plans. But we also have really big numbers. How would you feel if 300 million people came to the Wild Center? Oh, God. It sounds overwhelming, doesn't it? Yeah, and so when you think about what the scale and the reach is for the Park Service, we have a lot of opportunity to connect people and to help educate people and to help them find meaningful connections to place, to culture, and to history. And so this is a really unique place to teach from. So we have pretty big numbers, and so we can affect pretty big change. The other thing is that within the National Park Service, we have a program called the Climate Change Response Program, and it is housed in Colorado. How many people like Colorado or would go to Colorado? Imagine if you were a program manager and you managed the Climate Change Response Program for the National Park Service. Imagine that as a job. Or somebody within there that's like the communicator of the plan, or somebody who is a strategist that helps to figure out the different elements of the plan. So just think about that, because those are all jobs and careers and opportunities. How many of you think you want to do climate change work? Maybe, sort of, maybe. There are lots of different things that you can do. And if this is something that you're passionate about, there's a place for you in organizations like the Park Service, because we're addressing this work. So in our climate change response strategy, it was just updated. It just got a kickoff call about a month ago in the service. So this is a big update. You can find it on the website, and you can look at the different work that we're doing. I'm going to highlight just a couple things because there's a lot of work in there, and to take the moment now to talk about some of the key pieces that are important for all people to know. Indigenous knowledge is critical to understand and to give it its power and place in place. And one of the things that we're doing in the Park Service is honoring Indigenous knowledge alongside Western science. They can work together. They can inform each other. It's not one or the other. And this is a big part of the work that we're doing in the Park Service. Another thing, you've probably heard the 2 steps today. I heard that in one of the other sessions, talking about mitigation and adaptation. You'll see that in this plan. But I wanted to give you an example of one of the adaptive scenario planning elements that we did. This is right down the street from where I live. So I traveled here from Seward, Alaska. And so Exit Glacier is actually just down the road from me. And Exit Glacier is retreating. And so the park, Kenai Fjords National Park, did scenario planning to figure out, based on the things that happen in the future that we may or may not be able to predict, let's have a strategy to figure out what we're going to do depending on which scenario comes into play. How's that for thinking, right? Go for the long game. There's a lot of different ways that we can address some of these issues, and so I just wanted to introduce a couple of these ideas. This is Exit Glacier. We also manage really large landscapes, but that's not all that we do, right? How many of you have been to a National Park Service historic site or a cultural site? Yeah. And then we have these big wildernesses. Sometimes they're small wilderness too. But think about the scale of large landscape management. What if you were able to do work in a large landscape model and create change in that model? We do that every day. We do that every day. Whether it's through mitigating or adapting or restoring or through stewardship. So if you want to feel like there are positive stories of the environment, there absolutely are. And sometimes we have hard choices to make. And sometimes those decisions are easy or hard, but we're doing the work. So I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to laser focus a little bit into the work that I do. I focus on education. And so I started out at a center similar to the Wild Center. I went to school at UC Santa Cruz in California, and I worked at the Seymour Marine Discovery Center at Long Marine Lab, which is really similar. It has an aquarium, and we do science work and work with researchers and hold events. And so one of the things that's really interesting is that I didn't realize that there were jobs. Number one, I didn't realize that national parks existed until my late 20s. I'll tell you a little secret. I told somebody earlier today. I learned about national parks because somebody took me on a first date to Yosemite. Cool fact. Yeah. Yeah. And I was there and I was like, what is this place? And people work here? What? And so really, really interesting. My career is taking me through different positions focused on education. And last year, so now that I work in the Washington office, and coming out of COVID, how many of you felt like COVID was hard and isolated? You felt isolated? So I talked to the educators across the National Park Service, and that was a big thing of what they were feeling. And so in response to that, we stood up the first ever NPS Virtual Education Summit, 4 days, all virtual. And we pulled it together with an amazing team who built it so that we could deliver it last year for the first time to be responsive to people's needs. And one full day of our summit was focused on climate change and equity. And so really, really exciting, and I'm gonna come back to this, but just want you to know that almost all of the NPS educators attended that summit, and our education partners. Wouldn't hear about it in the news though, would you? Teachers, how many of you would love to do teacher professional development in a remarkable setting and get to see how to connect climate change and equity to your programs, or to just build more network, have time with your colleagues? There's opportunities for you in the National Park Service because we deliver teacher professional development, and I didn't want to leave you out of this talk because I knew that you'd be in the room. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you for all that you do and for everything you did the last few years. It is not lost on me. And one of the things that we're doing is that through that teacher professional development, our overall outcome is to create opportunities for student agency so that the students can have voice, you can have choice in the type of projects that you do, and be empowered in the type of stewardship work that you want to do. And so we're building this into our education programs. And then what about opportunities for you directly? How many of you might be interested in exploring something with the National Park Service? And it's okay if you're not. There are a bunch of opportunities that you can explore if you're interested. So this is Celeste. She came in as an ambassador, community ambassador, and then ended up hosting large training events for other community ambassadors that were coming in to work in local communities alongside the Park Service. So you can do volunteer work. Not everybody can volunteer. There are internships, there's paid internships. And they can be in nature settings, historic settings, cultural settings. You can also do student corps. So we have the Youth Conservation Corps, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and then seasonal positions. So maybe you're not ready to have a permanent position, right? But maybe you want to try something for a summer or a winter, because some of our NPS sites are winter parks and not summer parks. So think about the different ways that you can plug in if this is something that you might be interested in. And even if you're not interested in it for a full career, I would say explore it if you're trying to build skills into a particular field. How many of you like art? How many of you like IT? How many of you like history, writing, communication, visual information, architecture, infrastructure, wildlife? Yeah. Who wants to drive a boat? Who wants to drive a plane?
Yes.
Yeah. So you could learn those things in the Park Service. So even if you don't want to be a ranger for the long term, just think about the opportunities and the exploration that you can do and all the people that you can meet. Because there are extraordinary opportunities, whether you're in the field doing inventory and monitoring. This is an intern that I met for the first time this summer. He was working in Rocky Mountain National Park, and he was working in a plot that's been studied for 20 years in the high tundra of Rocky Mountain National Park. How many of you think that might be kind of a cool thing? He was pretty pumped, and he was really excited when I came over and talked to him and took his picture, and he was like, I love it, love this work. Maybe you're a teacher or you want to go into education. There's a place for you. There's a place for you. Maybe you want to fly drones, or in this case, this is launching off of a boat. It's an underwater drone doing filming. Pretty rad. And our latest cohort of ambassadors, that photo's just from a few weeks ago. So whatever your superpower, I just want to remind you again, it's about bringing your passion, your superpower, or your force, and connecting that with your community. And together, we can do really extraordinary things, especially when we organize ourselves and build strategy and go for the long game. So we can go for short-term gains, but we can also do really big work. And it's not really that intimidating. We can do really big things if we do it together. So next steps. Does anybody know why I came to this summit? Because you're so cool? Oh, no. What's that? It's the original? It's the original summit? Yeah. Why? Yeah. I think it's the other way around. So you could inspire me. Yeah. Yeah. So in the work that I do, I've been looking for other ways to pull in youth voice and choice and student agency. And one of the things that I realized was that youth summits might be that platform and that opportunity. So I reached out to Jen and to Hannah and asked if I could come and observe what you're doing here. So the next steps for me are to go back and figure out, can we look at launching some youth summits in collaboration with the National Park Service? How many of you think that might be a good idea? And then for you, it's so important for you to find your passion, to really invest in your superpower and to bring that to your purpose. Your superpower brought to your purpose, to your place. Because we have to enact that change and bring those superpowers to affect the change where the change is really needed, where that work really needs to happen. How many of you think I like my job? How many of you think I love my job? I really, really like my job. I love my job. Do you think I found my purpose? Yeah. Yeah. So I have a superpower. It might be a little obscure, but it works. And I brought it to my purpose, and I can bring it to a local place and to a much larger scale of place now. So just think about that. Just hold space for that. And so together, let's bring our superpowers together so we can create change through our collective force. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Shauna. That was amazing. We're so honored to have you here with us for the summit and excited to learn alongside you these next 2 days. Okay. So, I've got a couple announcements, but first, we've been waiting to do some more prizes. So, we're gonna do 3 more real quick here before dinner.